Hello, everyone, and welcome to Literary Tales. I'm your host, Paul Krause, and in this episode, we continue with our short introduction to Plato's Republic, examining the particular story, one of the most famous stories, if not the most famous story in all of the Republic, the Allegory of the Cave. The Allegory of the Cave is probably Plato's most famous metaphorical story in all of his works, and is certainly the most memorable moment in his Republic. The Allegory of the Cave is doing many things for Plato. It is a commentary on humanity's origo, or origin. It is a commentary on epistemology, the philosophy of knowledge. It is a commentary on what the life of the philosopher is like. It is an esoteric critique of the sophists, and it is also a commentary on the nature of mass society and tyranny. We will briefly explore all of these aspects to Plato's most memorable metaphor. Plato's origo of humanity is not the state of nature. It is not the state of nature that we are familiar with reading the likes of philosophers like Thomas Hobbes and John Locke. And it is not the communion with wisdom and beauty as in Plotinus, which results eventually in the fall of the soul into the world of tyranny and carnality. It is the cave, the cold, dark, wet, and ignorant cave. That said, Plato does not think that humans desire to remain in this cave. Instead, we have innate ideas of the forms within us, and we need to come to understand these forms in our lives. The faint knowledge of the forms is what compels man to leave the cave, to seek understanding. The innate ideas are what propel the soul, which is the thinking mind, the rational mind, to venture toward the light of truth. It fulfills our instinct and our want for wisdom. Thus, for Plato, humans naturally desire to know, but this desire to know does not always end well. So we return to what we know about Plato. He is an epistemological foundationalist. That is, he believes that not only is there truth in the world, but that we can come to know truth in the world. This is what separates him from the relativists and the epistemological nihilists, who assert that if there is truth, we cannot know truth, the relativists, or that there is no truth at all, the epistemological nihilists. This separates him, of course, from the sophists, who sing the tune that we are all familiar with today. While there is probably truth, we cannot know it, so we shouldn't even spend our time trying to know the truth. Instead, we should spend our time knowing the world of social construction, because this is the only world that we can know, because it is the world we've constructed. Plato rejects this view outright. He also opposes the nihilists, who take, again, the even more radical position that there is no truth and life is totally and unambiguously meaningless. The sun in this story represents the forms in Plato's metaphorical analogy. As Plato recounts, the philosopher, who is simply the person who follows his soul toward the light of the sun, gets up and starts pursuing wisdom. The pursuit of wisdom is the pursuit of the light rather than the cave of shadows, which is the cave of opinions. But our first exposure to the light is not good. Having spent our life up to this point in the cold, dark, wet, and ignorant cave, the light of the sun overpowers the philosopher. The philosopher retreats back into the cave. The retreat back into the cave is not because we do not desire knowledge or wisdom. Instead, it is because we are not used to knowledge and wisdom. We are used to the world of conventional opinions and personal prejudices and beliefs. When these conventions and personal beliefs are challenged, we often shrink away from what is being taught to us or what we are being exposed to. Initially, any exposure to the truth that is not our own is often harmful, and we try to shield ourselves from it. The retreat back into the cave at the first exposure of the light of truth is our learned defense mechanism. We like to think that we already know what there is to know about the world and about the things we discuss and converse about. No one likes to be wrong. That is because we are all the children, in actuality, of sophistry in Plato's view. The ills of sophistry have distorted us to seek the comfort of opinion rather than the pursuit of truth. Had there never been the rise of sophistry, our instinctive appetite would have simply moved from the darkness of the cave to the light of the sun, out on the plains, because we would instinctively know light is better than darkness, and the warmth is better than dampness. However, the sophists have made us accustomed to darkness and dampness. This is what we have to become used to. Hence, when the philosopher first encounters the light, he retreats back into the cave because he prefers, through custom, through his indoctrinated education, the darkness and dampness of opinions rather than the light and warmth of the truth. However, this encounter with the light of truth intrigues the philosopher further. He is curious and wants to learn about the light. After all, he has never had an encounter with this light before. As such, his inquisitive soul pushes him back out toward the light of the sun. The philosopher does not reintegrate into cave society. Instead, he once again leaves for the light of truth, knowledge, and wisdom. This is where the famous analogy of the dividing line comes in. The dividing line, in essence, is the point of no return. It is the line, epistemologically speaking, where one transitions from the world of social construction and the senses, which can be deceived, which observe only the socially constructed world, and into the world of the sun, which is, as we know, the world of the forms. It is the moment when the philosopher fully leaves the cave of opinions and enters the realm of truth. The philosopher loves the world of the sun, and in coming to know this world, which is vastly superior to the world of dark and ignorance which is found in the cave, he has actualized his soulful potentiality in dwelling with the light of truth. When the philosopher, who is enjoying the world of the sun, has come to know the fullness of the world of the sun, he seeks to share this knowledge and joy with the people in the cave. But as Plato says, his re-entry into the cave blinds him. He has become so accustomed to the light of truth that he stumbles throughout the cave because it is the world of opinion and senses. It is not the world of truth and the thinking mind. The other prisoners, who see the blind philosopher stumbling through the cave, infer, incorrectly, that the pursuit of wisdom has hurt him. They then deduce that the journey to the light was foolish. It is, in fact, for them, deadly. The pursuit of truth, to the sophists, who represent the cave society in this part of the story, is deadly and dangerous, as evidence from their wrong perception that the blind philosopher was blinded by the danger of the light, rather than being blinded by his re-entry into the world of dark opinions. This blinding of the philosopher in his return to the cave is Plato's warning to the philosopher. If the philosopher, who genuinely wants to help others, re-enters the cave, he risks becoming blind again. In other words, the world of opinion, which is the world of the cave and of the sophists, is so powerful and dangerous that it can remove the truth you had come to know and remold you back into a citizen of darkness and ignorance. Additionally, Plato warns of the danger that the philosopher faces if he reaches the mass herd in the cave and speaks of the wonderful world of the sun to them. The people in the cave, spurred on by the sophists, assert that the philosopher is mad. He must be out of his mind. From their perspective, he is mad. He is blind and has stumbled back to the cave. He can't see anything. He speaks unintelligibly, to them at least, because they don't know the truth. And as Plato says through Socrates, the cave society becomes annoyed with the philosopher and kills him. Plato notes throughout the story that the light of truth cannot enter the cave. Instead, you can only leave the cave. Thus, it is a choice we must all make. We either leave the world of opinion and sophistry for the world of the sun, however hard that might be initially. The philosopher who returns to the cave cannot bring light to them either. Instead, he can only speak to them about the world of the sun and try to lead them to that world. But as Socrates says, at this point, the people would not want to leave the comfort of the cave of opinions. The philosopher seems insane, paranoid, and blind. As the philosopher helps to guide them back, the cave people ultimately decide to kill him. The killing of the philosopher is twofold. First, it represents the social contract, that is the cave, repressing anything that challenges it. In other words, the philosopher has broken the public law and must suffer the consequences for trying to bring people out of the cave, thereby attempting to break the power of the sophists and their conventional contract that enshrines opinion as fact and condemns the pursuit of wisdom as breaking the law of the cave. Second, it represents the danger of mass society. While we want wisdom and truth, those who have fallen prey to the sophists will think the world of the cave is the truth. In thinking the world of the cave is the truth, they ignorantly defend opinion as truth. They do not know any better. Ignorance, as the phrase goes, is bliss. Thus, this is also a cautionary tale to the philosopher of the dangers of re-entry into the cave and of mass society. Ultimately, then, Plato advocates that the philosopher needs to detach himself from the cave and cave mentality. The true philosopher remains in the world of the sun and will be joined by other philosophers who leave the cave on their own. The intellectual, by contrast, who descends back into the cave, either dies or conforms back to the ways of the cave despite their original good intentions. And that is the difference between a philosopher and a public intellectual. The public intellectual goes back into cave society and tries, valiant as he may, but ultimately doomed to fail, to educate the people lost in the world of opinions of the grand world of truth. That fails. The philosopher, the man who is truly wise, according to Plato, understands this, and he remains out in the joy of the world of the forms, the world of the sun, and is eventually accompanied by others who join him on their own initiative. Lastly, the world of the cave, which is the world of sophistry, as we've been talking about, is also totalitarian and tyrannical. After all, the people of the cave are prisoners. They are chained. They are dominated by the sophists who control them and who seek to keep them in the cave. They do not seek the wisdom that Plato thinks humans naturally crave. Instead, they've been conditioned to suppress their thinking soul, to think is life in Plato's broader outlook, and accept opinion as truth. This is how all totalitarian and tyrannical societies operate. Totalitarian societies suppress one's thinking soul, the thinking mind, and demand through the chains that everyone accept the world of opinions, the false shadows visible on the cave wall, as the truth. Anyone who disagrees, anyone who attempts to break away, is a potential enemy who threatens the stability of cave society. As such, the prisoners will never find the happiness they desire according to Plato, because for Plato, happiness and freedom is tied to the knowledge of truth. Only those who dwell in the world of the sun, in union with the world of the forms, are those who are happy and ultimately free. Plato's allegory of the cave is actually primarily a political story. It is a story of the dangers of a tyrannical politia, the politia of the cave. We mustn't forget that while Plato does have things to say about anthropology, epistemology, and more, he was primarily a political philosopher, and we can see, having just examined the story of the cave, how the allegory of the cave is, in fact, an allegory of the political.